Hello, Sunshines, and welcome to another episode of Couch Conversations with Vanessa. If you read the thumbnail, then I'm sure you can see that this is going to be a very sensitive topic. So I am issuing a trigger warning now. Um, Again, anything that I talk about here on Couch Conversations with Vanessa, these are truly my experiences. It is never my goal to try to tell anybody else how they should go through their life and their journey or how they should heal. I just want to be one that is transparent enough to share my journey and some of the things that I've gone through, and also the lessons that I've learned in going through what I've gone through. At the age of 9, I was molested by a neighborhood friend. Um, this was someone that, was close with the family, and I was molested due to this close friendship or whatever. And I don't want to talk about the experience itself, but I would like to talk about the effects that it had on me. So, growing up all this time, at the age of 9 years old, I lost a lot of self confidence, even before I even knew what that was. So, self confidence, low self esteem, guilt, abandonment issues, a lot of different things that ultimately altered my life in such a dramatic way. It also caused me to become very promiscuous at a very young age. Um, and so what I did was, with me being molested at that young age, it caused me to be very promiscuous. And probably when I was around 14 or 15, being promiscuous, with several different men, bad relationship after bad relationship, very bad choices after very bad choices, because I was just feeling so low about myself. And what people didn't know was, all the time that they thought that I was standoffish, I was a mean person, I was this, I was that, I was really hiding shame and a secret that I felt like everyone knew. I felt like I was going through life with a label on my head that everybody could see my secret. And so my defense mechanism had grown to be, I want to be a mean person, standoffish, quiet to myself, so no one would dig in and really ask or know my secret, because then I would fear judgment. But the biggest thing that I was going through, even as a child at 9 years old, my biggest concern was, what if my mom didn't believe me? And I think that that would have really, really crushed me if I went through and had the courage to speak up and tell my mom, and she didn't believe me. So that was a chance that I didn't want to take. So I held this secret for over 30 years without telling anybody, and never connected the dots of me making these bad decisions, these bad choices was a result of what I had gone through, how I felt about myself. I never felt worthy. I never felt good enough. I never felt like I had anything to bring to the world, because I was now damaged. So, in feeling that way, I became an overachiever, you know. So, I wanted to solve everybody else's problem, be there for everybody else, because that would allow me not to focus on myself and what I was going through and what I needed to deal with internally. Everybody would come to me for advice, everybody would come to me for help. What would you do about this? What would you do about that? Help me research this, help me research that. So, that's my role. That's what my role had become to so many. And so, not only was I being used in romantic relationships, but I was also being used by the kindness that I was dishing out, thinking that if I be nice, if I be there for everybody else, then they will see my value, they will see my worth and validate me. But that never happened for me. So imagine going through just all of your life being the overachiever, concerned about what everybody else is thinking and feeling, and not doing the work on yourself. So everything is compounded now. So, even going through life being promiscuous, I ended up getting pregnant. And I can laugh and joke about this now, but I could have been one that was on the Maury Povich show. You are not the father. You're not the father. Yeah, that was my life. That was my story. I'm not ashamed of it now, because when I did get the results back, my son was 12 years old. When I did get those results back, it it took away that guilt and shame of that layer of guilt, that, you know what, at least I know who it is now. Now, mind you, because I felt like I had put myself in this predicament, I never got assistance. I've always worked into taking care of my son, always. So I felt like that this was a hole that I had dug for myself. And I watched my mom be a single parent of four, just work. So that's all I knew, was to work and take care of my child. I put myself in this situation. So it was my responsibility to get myself out of the situation. So on the day that I found out who my son's dad was also the day that I experienced domestic violence. So compounded with low self-esteem, low self-worth, now a domestic violence situation. Now my voice felt like it had been taken from me, because if I spoke up, if I said anything, who's to say in my next relationship if this person wouldn't try to harm me or be upset? So you walk through life on eggshells in relationships, not wanting to upset them, already feeling like, you don't deserve better anyway. So I did notice in my relationships, as I look back on it now, I attracted so many broken men as well, that probably saw the desperation on my face and in me, that they were attracted to me because of what I could offer them, but they were broken as well. So we were two broken people together, I felt like, in the majority of the relationships that I had. So, even after having my son, I think my son may have been 1 years old when I met my ex-husband. Me and my ex-husband were together for probably 7, 8 years, but we got married, and we were only together married for 1 year, living together. But it wasn't about love, and I knew that, and he did too. He didn't love me, and I didn't love him. But I sacrificed because I wanted my son to have a father. I would sacrifice whatever just for him to have a normal life. So I thought. So I put myself through whatever I needed to, just for the sake of my son. So again, not knowing your worth, not knowing your value, what you will put up with just for the sake of someone else. But it wasn't until I wrote my book that I started to doing inner work on myself. At some point, you can't go through life and just continue to use as a crutch what had happened to you. Life happens to us all. Maybe not as dramatic as a sexual abuse, but life happens to us all. But I had to take accountability for my actions and who I was. That 9-year-old little girl didn't have a voice, but I have a voice as a grown woman now, that I can speak about and share what I've gone through. So in taking accountability, I had written my first book, The Lost and Found, My Journey to Life. So that told my story of what I had gone through, growing up with the molestation and all of that. So I wanted to write my own book to tell my own story, my own way. I wasn't going to be exposed for anything that I could tell myself, and then you could get it from the horse's mouth. So I wrote my first book. But that also, me writing that also made me become even more accountable. I can't be out here trying to tell and give advice to anybody else if I wasn't taking my own advice. I went and met with my dad, who lives out of town. So my dad is an alcoholic, or was an alcoholic, and so every time I would see him, he was always drunk. But God saw fit that this time that he wasn't drunk, and we were able to have a very good conversation, and it validated me. I found out that I wasn't a mistake. I was conceived in love. He did care about my mom. All of those things, to where I was thinking that I was abandoned. He didn't care. He didn't love me. But in doing so, I no longer saw my dad as an alcoholic, but I saw him as a person. I saw him through the eyes of compassion now, because he had his own story that he was dealing with. And so that gave me comfort in knowing that, you know, and then as time went on, I was able to also um, clear the air with my mom, make things right with my mom. And I noticed that I had been projecting out so much anger, so much hurt on my own, that I was projecting it out on other people. I blamed my mom for so much. And I just thank God that I was allowed the opportunity to see my mom for who she was before she died, my best friend, my pretty girl, all of that. So that allowed healing to take place as well, before she transitioned. And so, still taking the accountability to do the hard work, the inner work, that needed to be done. And then to get to a place where, you know what, now to be celibate, I did that intentionally so I could learn to love all of me. I had a problem in separating the act of molestation with a healthy sex life. So I had to step away from that in order to get to the place where I can have relationships and have relations where it wasn't affected because of my views of what had happened to me almost 40 years ago. So that was healing for me to do too, to take that time for myself to be able to do just that. And so, this is my journey now of, you know, always knowing that I had a gift inside of me, but the enemy was trying to take that away from me at an early age, because I know I'm gifted to create safe spaces for women. I know that I'm created to empower and encourage women. I do this, and this is just something that I do naturally. One of the reasons why I had started my nonprofit organization was to give back to women that may have been going through domestic violence, substance abuse, low income, those things. I'm very passionate about reaching out and empowering women. So that has started me on my journey to now be seen. That was another issue that I had with being molested. I never wanted to be seen. I wanted to play the background. I didn't want to be out in the forefront. Like I said, I can do the inspirational post, I can do the graphics, I can do all those things. But God is challenging me now to step outside of my fear, to come before the camera so someone can see a story that will relate to who I am, and then may also find themselves in this same story where they can be empowered, they can be strengthened to get the help that they need, start the healing journey that they may need. So if there's anyone that's watching this video that has been inspired, please move forward with life, whatever that looks like for you, whenever that looks like for you. I encourage you to do so, you know. And if you would like to learn more about my journey, please click the link in my bio where you can purchase my books, my ebooks, my free mindset guides, all of the things about changing your perspective and about who I am in my journey. I hope that this has blessed you, and I look forward to another couch conversations. Until the next time, may God bless you and have an amazing day in and on purpose.